but then I'll just continue on with this conversation here. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is because from my own personal kind of point of view, there's a lot of social controllers, there's a lot of very powerful people, whether through the monetary incentive or other reasons, are doing their best to keep people at a very low vibrational stage. One of the lessons in marketing is that if you can make someone have the feelings and evoke the feelings of sadness, depression, missing out, FOMO, you're able to sell them something more than if someone is happy, content with themselves, confident with themselves. And it's not only a sales marketing technique, but I do believe there is a bigger kind of spiritual war going on against making people very low vibrational beings. That's kind of my point of view. Do you see it the same way? And how do you see and how do you judge people's kind of vibrational levels?
Well, humanity is at a tipping point. There's never been more people that are on a personal path of spiritual growth, and there's never been more dysfunction in the world. And so, how do you crystallize that? Well, every tree needs pruning before it gives better fruit. There's ecosystems that are fire-driven that are meant to burn to the ground. So we're seeing a lot of unraveling of traditional systems here, and there's a lot of people with a vested interest in that not happening. They're trying to maintain the status quo, but you can't block evolution. And evolution has taught us out of 400 million years of fossil records that the primary direction of travel is to evolve to more levels of complexity, and complexity requires cooperation. In other words, we're here to become love. If you want to put a spin on it at that level. The difference between the cells in your body operating in harmony and an amoeba is you have massive cooperation. And so the Earth right now, I believe, is going through a transition period where more people are breaking out because they have access to information. Now, don't get me wrong, the internet is also the biggest source of disinformation in human history, and there's an agenda behind that. But you do have access now to information that has previously been almost unheard of. Why? Because 100 years ago, 200 years ago, only 1% of the population could read or write. And your level of consciousness or your rise in spiritual awareness was governed by the quality of your village elder or your rabbi or your minister, or maybe if you're in the top 1% and political elites or the scholars, you had access to books in libraries that others didn't have access to. But that's all changed. You want to go read something like Power versus Force, you will have a complete different understanding levels of consciousness and where the world is moving. Right? If you now want to have access to spiritual development, Siri will tell you where to get it. I mean, we live in such an incredible time in history. So what I don't do personally is I don't get involved in the sort of the fight between the good and the evil, because I don't play that game. I'm the star of the movie of my life, as you are of your life, and everybody else is, you're the star of the movie of your own life. Everybody else is a film extra in your movie. Now, what script is being written for your movie depends upon your attitude and your level of consciousness. It's just the way it is. So you come from a higher level of understanding, compassion, humility, tolerance, unconditional love. You have a script written for your movie that reflects a lot of that. If you come from anger, hate, jealousy, depression, guilt, shame, and all of the low-level stuff, you're going to have a script writer that's writing the script of your movie that validates those levels of scenes that you're going to perpetuate. So being able to let go of that starts with being okay where you're at. Get off the I'm going to try and save the world or change the education system. Well, that's noise. Mother Teresa says, never invite me to an anti-war rally, invite me to a pro-peace rally. And sometimes we get caught up as an excuse for venting anger because it makes us feel good in the moment as some sort of level of power, which feels better than guilt, by, bitching about the system or bitching about this or, going on some debate. Doesn't do anything. Concentrate on being the best version of who the hell you are in this moment, rise your consciousness, and you will have a completely different experience in Earth School, and let the others go play that game.
Don't become what you're fighting, and that's why there's been a huge shift on our YouTube channel. We used to be able to confront people like Henry Kissinger, David Rockefeller, all the presidents. It didn't matter, we always confronted them. But then I saw a paradox to that, because it's like we're only empowering them by just going after them, and that's something that I made a kind of clear decision just to keep information out there and inform inform people and try to give people as much value as I can on this YouTube channel, which was a huge transition. But what I wanted to specifically talk to you about is because if you're watching the mainstream media right now, you would think that the times that we're living in right now are the worst in human history, that there's so much war, that there's so much suffering, that there's so much conflict, that there's so much hatred out there. But in reality, if you look at the statistics, when it comes to murder rates, when it comes to life expectancy, when it comes to education, when it comes to infant mortality, we are at record highs than we ever were in human history. I do understand that, but there is a kind of twist to it that kind of contradicts what you said earlier, because a lot of people right now are also dealing with a large number of depression and anxiety than they ever have before, and many people point to the internet because of that. So how do you navigate that kind of paradox that exists?
Well, to just come back to your previous comment about, changing the focus around the channel, one of the things that always springs to mind is the phrase, if you bring energy to something, you energize it. If you bring neutrality to something, you neutralize it. And people don't understand that the mind is either your best friend or your worst enemy. Everything only exists in your mind. Right? Your interpretation of reality exists based upon what's happening between your ears. That's it. Again, two men sat behind prison bars, one saw mud, the other saw stars. So when it comes to being depressed, it's almost a byproduct or a consequence of how you're feeding your mind. So if you imagine your mind as a compass needle, it can only point in one direction at a time. Even if you think you're thinking of several different things, you're moving your compass needle quickly in different directions, but it can only point in one direction at a time. Now, most of the time, we are what I call sleeping awake. We're running off programs. And that's useful because it means we don't have to learn how to walk every day. Evolution builds that in. It thinks if we do something consistently, it becomes a habit. It's handed over to the limbic brain. We don't have to consciously think about it or use up the precious prefrontal cortex, which is our evolutionary crown, to be able to use critical thinking to analyze. So from that perspective, you have to understand that when people are sleeping awake, which is 95% of the time, their compass needle gravitates to its default magnetic north. Now, how do you magnetize a compass needle? Go back to school. You continually stroke it in one direction with a magnet, and that will magnetize it. So what are you stroking your compass needle with? If you are continually programming your compass needle with news and media and why the world won't work and more evidence of why you're not good enough because you haven't bought some shit on TV that it says you'd be better if you did, and all of that bullshit, then you may want to think happy thoughts consciously, but the 95% of the time we're sleeping awake, your compass needle is going to gravitate to depression, anxiety, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of love, all of this stuff, because that's where it's been programmed. Now, as human beings, we don't get to vote on whether or not we get programmed, because we're programmable by design. We're cybernetic organisms. But the question that I would ask is, how do you want to be programmed? Because that we have control over. This is a long way around of saying, turn off the frickin' media, stop watching commercialism, start feeding your mind with something positive, and what you're going to be doing, you're going to restroking that needle in a positive direction. Now, when I went into Pentonville, again, one of the toughest jails in Europe, most violent, and 3 deaths in 1 week was the worst week I was there, by the way. I was happy, I was so excited going in, because I had programmed my default compass needle to a point where all of the cells in my body would repel a negative thought. Now, I've conditioned all of my cells in my body to think positive. Over time, that's how my compass needle works. So if all of a sudden I start getting scary, I've got 50 trillion cells that are waging chemical warfare on my side to say, dude, come on, you're better than this. I believe in you. We've got this. Don't worry. There's a reason. Every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. But most people are too scared and coming from fear and focusing on the adversity to bother to water the seed. And and from that perspective, where are you magnetizing your compass needle? The diet you should be most concerned about is not the food you're eating, it's the thoughts you're thinking. Your thoughts are programmed, they're habitual. You now have access to how you let that in. And if you think that the news is telling you what's going on in the world, you're in Disneyland. That's not the purpose of the news, to report the news. The purpose of the news is to stimulate a part of the brain called the amygdala to be able to grab your attention to record you as a viewing statistic so that they can then sell advertising. I mean, that's the business model of the media. It's not a charity. So how do they do that? Sensationalism, twisting, distortion. I've not watched a news report. I've not read a newspaper in nearly 18 years. I have no clue what's going on in the world. I have every clue what's going on in my world. I'm happy about that. So we said, well, what's going on? How do you know what's going on? I'm like, are you stupid? Let me tell you what's going on. Everything is going on. A better question would be, what would you rather choose to focus on? Now, if you see the news, or let's say the world, as like the Amazon forest at night, and your attention is a flashlight, where do you want to shine it? The media says, oh my God, look at this snake eating a rat. I'm like, oh wow, look at this hummingbird being born. Yeah, everything's going on, but how you choose to focus that is your choice. Nobody can take that away from you. Yeah, nobody has the right to tell you you can't do it. And when you realize that and you start reprogramming yourself, life starts to shift. And that's a conscious choice. As I said earlier, nobody can do anything to you emotionally without your permission. And nobody has the right to tell you what you should or shouldn't watch. Make a choice, make it something about you being able to rise out of the ashes of conformity and lead something of a more inspirational purpose by going adding value to the world in whatever way it is. Just by showing up as somebody as an example that doesn't watch the news is a beautiful example to step up at and be an example of.
Yeah, and that's something that the media and news owners will never tell you, since it's been even proven that news articles and headlines that evoke fear and anger get the most shares. And that's why they keep doing it, because it's either monetary driven or just evil, cruel driven. Whatever you believe, that's up to you. Peter, thank you so much for the download of information and the reminders of all the lessons that I forgot and all the lessons that I've been reminded of. Anything else you'd like to say?
Only that everything I've shared here isn't because I'm special. It isn't because I'm sort of superhuman. It's because I just made a conscious choice, as you can. I'm just you out of the chair. If you're having thoughts right now where you're thinking life's ganging up on you, seriously, understand this. No matter what you've done, no matter what you've not done, you're worthy of love. It's impossible to fail in Earth School, and you've got a gift to be able to give to the world. Go give it fearlessly. I love you.
Beautiful. That's a great ending.